suggested I really wanted to discuss this on the show. Saw it last week. Catherine and I did on Monday, Hard Truths.
Mm.
And that was kind of, I messaged you guys that night and I said, this would be a really good conversation on Sleepless, this movie. And you guys hadn't heard of it. You hadn't heard of
No.
it, right?
Mm-mm. No, I have not.
So we were going to talk that.
Yeah.
And then the bastards, they had to clear the theaters for Dogman, so you couldn't see it.
It's really funny because I had neither heard about Hard Truths. I think I saw like one or two things on it, but I didn't even know the plot. I wasn't even drawn in. And then I also haven't seen today's movie, which we'll talk about. I haven't heard about tonight's movie until I saw it in like sitting in the theater. And it was like, Jesus, I am all over the place. Going back to, just the fact that January was a kind of a shit show for all of us and for all three of us. And it's like, man, January, what a year. The years go by fast, and January was one of them.
Ain't that the damn truth, too? You got me nervous there for a second. I was like, oh, you have not seen Companion, huh? This is gonna be a fun show. But yeah, we were gonna review Hard Truths tonight, but again, didn't exited theaters about as quickly as it entered. And the one movie, there's two new releases this weekend that we're gonna see. It's Hard Eyes and Love Hurts. Those are the two that we're gonna see this weekend.
In honor of
What's
Valentine's Day.
also Yes, indeed. What's also going to what's also impacting theaters out here. I don't know if we're gonna get to see it. I hope it lasts another week. It's still kind of TBD, but it's The Brutalist,
Mm.
which is up for a baker's dozen Academy Awards, I think, or something
Wow.
like that. That one though, the reason it's been not low priority, not that, but it's been hard. It's 3 hours and 35 minutes.
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve. It's the show that is a little belated with its worst of 2024 show, but we were just talking in the green room about how January was rough for all of us individually in vastly different ways, and I'm just grateful that we can do this show today with a full house. Good to be with you today, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. Me, Steve Pulaski, Joe Viso, and Dominic Guanzon here for one of my favorite shows of the year, truthfully, bar none. This is always an enjoyable show. I waffle back and forth between which shows I like more. Is it the best show of the year, or the best of the year, or the worst of the year show? And you know, as much great joy as I get from talking about some of my favorite movies of the year, it's really also cathartic and it's fun to talk about the worst movies we saw in a given calendar year. And I will say, kind of touched on this for the best of 2024 show, insofar that 2024 was a very good year for movies. I don't know about great. It wasn't a particularly great year for movies, but it was a very good year for movies. Now, that being said, there was a lot of shit in 2024, too. There was a lot of really bad movies. Like, I was kind of going through it just for fun earlier today. There are definitely movies on, it's kind of hard to word this, but from last year that would not have made my list this year, given the depth of garbage that came out this year. In so many words. Now, contrarily, there are movies from last year that would have topped my list. Like, for example, The Holdovers was my number one last year. That, if it came out this year, that would have been my number one this year, too. So it goes a little bit both ways. But last year, I remember having a really hard time making a worst list. I remember my number 10 pick, I gave 2 out of 4 stars because
I
I was
I
just
also
strapped.
I also remember like when I did my top 10 or bottom 10, whatever you want to call it, um of worst movies of 2023. I threw some on there and I was like, "Hey man, like it's not a bad movie. It just ended up here." But like this year it was like, "Oh no, I got a clear-cut 10. No disagreements whatsoever."
If nothing else, because I've become known for this, not only, I guess, on the internet on a very small scale, but also on this show. This year's movies were so bad, God's Not Dead 5 didn't crack my top 5.
Wow.
Uh, so that is a statement unto itself. Frankly, it's one of the least offensive God's Not Dead movies too. So I thought it would be very inaccurate to put that movie in my top 5. Though it's still on my list, still earned its place. But we got a full house here today, though. Off last week, full house today. Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon here today. How are you gents doing? Joe, start with you.
Man, hold on, let me just throw on my flannel. It's getting a little chilly in this room. Um
It's
I
snowing
wasn't
out
here.
there, man.
It is,
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
it is coming down out here.
I think we're getting
Um,
more than you guys because our snow started about like 3 in the morning, I think.
oh yeah,
Mm.
you definitely
Three.
are then. For me, I unfortunately was sick last week. January, we were just talking about this. Oh no, I wasn't sick last week. I had my work commitment that I have every first Wednesday of the month. The week before that, I got my ass kicked by getting sick again. I swear to God, I think January just had it out for me. If you know me personally, you know what I was going through, like personally. I know I just use those two words both again and again. But to not get into so much detail, I got sick. My ear got clogged up with fluid, and then I all got better. And then a week later, I got sick, and then my ear got clogged up, and it was clogged up with fluid, and I was just like, did the same thing just happen to me? The same exact sickness, illness I had a week ago come rushing back in and kicked my ass once more. And then I stay home from work because I don't want to spread it. I go to the office and it's just like there's like a million people sick and it's like, go home, work from home. What are you guys doing here? Please. It was ridiculous, but I feel so much better ever since the start of February. It's like my sinuses have gone down, allergies have stopped. Steve recommended a great doctor to me, helped me with my ear problem. so on and so forth that like I just feel so much better. I'm just ready to start a new month as if it was the start of a new year.
Well, and February is a short month too, so we're almost
Yeah.
half over. If that's any consolation too, and I think this is also the point of the year too, where the winter weather really starts to hit. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Where it's been cold for so long. This is also one of those cold snows too. Like it's very cold out here in eastern Iowa. It's very cold. It's gonna be like -6 tomorrow morning. It's not
Yeah.
one of those tranquil snows where it's like 30 and it's actually kind of nice to be outside when the snow falls. You know what I mean? This is like one of them just like brutally miserable freezing fog snows too. So it's not we can't even get a fun snow for a significant snow. Dom, how are you doing?
Doing okay. Yeah, on I think on Monday it's gonna be -7. Not to talk about the weather, but really just bracing for how cold it's going to be. But other than that, just enjoying. I took a week off from work because I have a crap ton of PTO to spend, but will evaporate by the end of March. So, birthday week. Anyway, in terms in terms of getting my shit together for the start of the year, it's been rough. Like Joe said, I think collectively, yeah, as we said, it's really rough start to the year for various personal reasons, and yeah, it'll get better, guys. It'll get better, like the movies.
Yes, indeed, too, because it's also been a very weird I guess not really weird. Like this weekend too, Captain America comes out, which I don't know if you guys saw. I don't have any interest in seeing it. It's not on the Sleepless schedule. I told you I forfeited Marvel movies really largely after Guardians 3. Um, it's getting fucking lambasted. Like
Oh, really?
yeah, I don't know. I
Really?
don't know
I
if
thought it was just getting mixed reviews. I didn't know it was getting lambasted.
yeah, it's down to like 48 on Rotten Tomatoes now.
Oh shit.
Well, and here's the thing, the reason I say land-based because you look at like 48%, and this is the deception of Rotten Tomatoes. 3 of the 4 critics that I like that have reviewed it on Letterboxd, I'm talking like 1 star, 1.5.
Oh, fuck.
Like
I'm seeing it tomorrow night, so I'll find out for myself.
yeah, you're braver than me. But yeah, this is not no pun intended. But yeah, no, it's getting completely like eviscerated. That I've seen. Like the negative reviews are awful. For it, which I think is funny in a way too, because like this is the first like really big movie of the year.
Yeah.
It really is because it's about the time when we get a blockbuster. You know what I mean? Like mid-February, something like that. You know.
You know, and it's crazy too, because back to back so far with horror movies, if you want to call Companion that. But that and Hardy Eyes, very creative, fun movies to go see.
You liked
over
Hard
this
Eyes too, huh?
Yeah, yeah, dude. I haven't reviewed it on Letterboxd yet, but I saw it, had a blast with it.
Great time at the movies.
Yeah.
Great time.
If you're going to Valentine's Day weekend movies, go see Dogman. Go see go see that Led Zeppelin documentary. But if you want something more Valentine oriented or just a big movie like that you can go see with a crowd, go see Hard Eyes. Go see Companion.
Excellent use from, and then we'll start our list. Excellent use in Hard Eyes of Amazed by Lone Star.
Yeah.
That ballad. Excellent use. And a great sequence at a vineyard. Like that opening sequence was so good. I thought the movie,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, was gonna blow its load too early.
Yeah.
Because I saw this week, Catherine and I watched. You want to talk about a movie that blew its load way too early? Was Y2K. I was so disappointed by that movie. Was so disappointed. That was one of the most. If I could make a separate like top 5 most disappointing movies of last year, that might be number 5. I was really
Wow.
looking forward to that from the writer.
Disappointing, not necessarily bad.
No, not good, but very very disappointing, very mediocre movie from the writer that brought us Brigsby Bear, no less too. But anyway. We'll get started on our lists. How did we go the order before? Was it me, Joe, Dom? Was that the order, I think, for best?
I think so.
I think
I
so.
believe
I
that was
think
the order.
actually, was I in the middle? I don't know anymore.
I think it was because I go kind of like clockwise how you
Dom,
guys
you
are
definitely
positioned
were
on my
last
screen.
because I have the
Okay.
tabs open the same way as last week too.
And I go
Got it.
I go by it however you guys pop up clockwise on my screen is how I decide
Okay.
the order. So We will do that. I will give how we do it. We count backwards from five. I give my fifth, then Joe, then Dom, then I give my fourth, then Joe, then Dom, and that is how we do it. We're going 4 or 5 years in a row with this. You should know by now. Let's get started
You
on
can count.
this.
Come on.
Yep, yep, yep. Let's get started on this because this will be a try not to make it a record-breaking long show, but I've got some stuff to say, and I'm sure you guys do too. So without further ado, my pick for fifth worst movie of 2024 is Bob Marley One Love. Now, this was a movie that suggested that it was going to be one of the different biopics. And why I say that is because this, unlike a lot of musical biopics, another one that appears on my list later in my list, number 10, Back to Black. Back to Black tried to be all encompassing and tell the whole life story of Amy Winehouse. Bob Marley, One Love, got the approach right. It's set over the course of basically 2 to 3 years, 76 to 78. Marley moves to London. He forms the Wailers. He records Exodus, and he's sort of grappling with being this like kind of like a Muhammad Ali figure where he's like known for an art form and he's a celebrity in that way, but he's also kind of a revolutionary figure. So on that basis alone, you think that this movie is going to be very successful. And it's also in part held together by Kingsley Ben-Adir, who does a very noble job at capturing sort of the essence of Marley in a big way. But unbelievably is this movie a mess. And this is one of those movies too, and it's a very cynical opinion to have, but I sit through so many of these musical biopics, I can't help but have it now, especially like Back to Black and Bohemian Rhapsody, is that these movies too, I'm really, this is one of these tropes. I know we're not cinema sins, but one of these tropes that's in musical biopics is really starting to frustrate me. I'm so sick of somebody like a world famous musician who's sitting on his couch noodling on a guitar, and then all of a sudden jamming is a fucking hit. Like a complete unknown. We didn't review it on the show, the Bob Dylan biopic, which I had low expectations for. That was a pretty good to very good movie at times. One of the best things about that movie was it didn't turn some of Dylan's iconic songs into needle drops.
Yeah.
It actually let them breathe and let them have scenes and let the songs show the impact. There's a scene in the Bob Dylan biopic where he performs The Times They Are A-Changin' at a festival for the very first time. And by the third verse, the crowd singing along and the chorus, it like they catch the rhythm of it and they follow along.
I want to add on to that movie as well, the Bob Dylan one, Complete Unknown. It also doesn't really focus too much. I mean, if the main person is Bob Dylan, but it does kind of just focus more on like a pivotal time in music where like all these folk singers existed at one point, like Bob Dylan and everything, and you get other actors playing them, like Edward Norton, all these other people. And it's like it actually focuses like on their stories too for like a little bit, and you get to know more about them. And it's like, again, it's great to have just a biopic that focuses on one pivotal point in time that can talk about so much with the artist, the music itself, and just history at that moment.
It's the Lincoln approach.
Yes.
Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. Obviously not a musician, but he was a wrestler. But Lincoln, it's like, yeah, the passage of the 14th Amendment or 13th Amendment. You don't need to go into his childhood. You don't see him as a kid. You don't even go really into the assassination all that much. Just as a 2-minute end note, not really a whole like here's a 15-minute sequence where they hunt down John Wilkes Booth. Like no, it's just the amendment. That's it.
There's touches of Mary Todd might have had mental illness back when the treatment was shooting you, if you said my head hurts. But but moreover, Bob Marley One Love, though, to focus on that movie too, it's so scattershot. It's for a movie that focuses on a very, very definite amount of time. This movie jumps around to the point where it's incoherent. And it's also very lousily staged. In terms of that, like, it relies too much on knowledge, on pre-existing knowledge, where like a complete unknown, I think people our parents' age would appreciate that movie the most because they remember growing up during the Dylan Renaissance and his rise and things like that. I think that movie is one of the rare movies of as of late that really would connect with the older generation. There's not many movies like that. Where Bob Marley One Love kind of assumes that you have knowledge of like a Jamaican
Yeah.
uprising and things that just, you can critique the American education system for sure, but like are just not as common knowledge for a regular audience too. So that's alienating as well. So at the end of the day, it's One Love, one star for me. That's my fifth worst movie of the year is Bob Marley One Love.
Not to spoil my list, but it will be popping up. Not in the top 5, but you'll see it later on in my list. It's also so bad, Steve. You didn't even mention where not to watch it on your slide.
No, and that was my. I think I thought I mentioned that on the best show. I said like I did. That's a new thing I tried this year with my list. Was my subtle difference was I didn't put where you could watch these movies.
That's just
No.
how bad they are.
One Love demands your pre-existing knowledge. If you really want to know, Google it. That's if it's a great movie, I'll tell you where to watch it in an instant.
Dom, you got anything else you want to throw in there?
No, man.
All right, I'm gonna go into my number 5. My number 5 worst of 2024 is Steve. Oddly enough, it would be on your number 5 most disappointed. It's on my number 5 worst of. It's Y2K.
Oh wow! Okay, did not expect that. No wonder you were so mum.
Directed by Kyle Mooney. It's available on demand, but it'll be more like demand your Mooney back. Zinger.
Gene Shalit looking ass.
Hey man, that's better than the jokes they had in this movie. Boom, got him twice. Hey man, do you think the 2000s are funny? Do you think Fred Durst is funny? If you said yes to both those questions, I got a movie for you. It's called Y2K. I was actually really looking forward to this movie. I thought it would just be a fun like thing to end the year with, like one of these like A24. And I was surprised this is an A24 movie. Like I said, A24. I even mentioned this when we were doing our best of. Like as the year started, we had Civil War, and I was like, oh, that was great. Can't wait to see what the rest of the year is like. Dude, I don't remember anything else from A24. Neon, on the other hand, it's like I can name you 6 Neon films I saw last year that like come to the top of my head like that. I know that Steve's got one on his head, literally one specifically. But yeah, this movie is just it's showing a bit of a decline in A24's quality that I'm not trying to blame this movie, but I think this movie did kind of play into now more business moves for them, and that is unfortunately the thing that won Best Picture for them. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Again, I'm not blaming this movie. That movie's still incredible. It deserves all the accolades it's gotten and everything. But you could tell that studio-wise and business decision-wise, they definitely are trying to cash in on just weird concepts like that over and over again. And it's just like, well, Everything Everywhere All at Once worked because of the vision behind it. And I'm not saying Kyle Mooney didn't have a vision here. Actually, yeah, I am saying that. And now that I think about it, this movie just feels kind of a bit mindless. You have, I think, just a very talented 3 main leads here. With Rachel, I know this girl gets hate like on the internet 24/7, but I still like her. Rachel Zegler.
I can't believe it's not Jenna Ortega.
There you go. Yeah. You have Julian Dennison. For those of you who have seen Deadpool 2, he's the big kid in that. For those of you who have seen anything directed by what's his name, Taika Waititi, he's from Hunt for the Wilder People. Very funny kid. And anything he's been in, I've always laughed at like his comedic timing. And then Jaden Martell from the It movies. Again, solid 3 leading kids right there, but you gave him nothing really to do. It starts off kind of like a half-assed super bad movie, and then it becomes like this. There you go. See, and then it becomes just a mindless apocalyptic movie that's not really creative. I thought the whole machines coming to life and actually killing us would be cool, but dude, I hate to say it, but that Stephen King movie, what's it called, Full Throttle or whatever, the one that he directed himself. That
Maximum
movie,
Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive. Full Throttle sounds like the porn knockoff of it, I guess. I don't know. Maximum Overdrive, I think, even just does, I think, a little bit more creative stuff with their technology killing people than this movie did. And then the last 20 minutes of this movie, and look, I hate to spoil it, but I don't think many people really cared about this movie. Fred Durst does enter the movie, and that's basically the joke, is that it's just Fred Durst doing stuff, and it's just like, all right, well, that's funny, I guess. I just remember sitting there just literally waving back and forth in my chair in the theater, just going, oh man, eventually this movie has to end. And it just kept going at times. I was just like, dude, yeah, this is definitely my worst of list. I laughed a couple times, thought some ideas were cool, but overall, by the time the movie ended, I said I could have done without this. Um, Especially near the end of the year, like I wasn't crazy about Gladiator 2, but at least like I enjoyed parts of it. Loved Wicked, and then I go to the theater on Christmas Day, and I saw Nosferatu, and I was like, you know what? I want to end the year on one more movie. Y2K, baby. We're ending the, like, they're ending the New Year Day, like, in this movie. I'm ending New Year's 2024 with you. Oh, shit. What a bad choice. My number 5, Y2K.
Real quick, I'll just add because it's fresh in my mind. We just watched it on Monday. The movie makes two fatal errors very early in the movie. Number one is killing off the funniest character.
Yeah.
Killing off the character with the most charisma in the movie way, 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 way too early. And it was a bold decision, but the four characters we're stuck with, three of the four really suck.
Yeah.
Like they're just not interesting. The lead's not bad. He's kind like the two it starts out with are very much Seth and Evan from Superbad. They're identical. They even end up at a convenience store at one point, just like in Superbad. But killing off the funniest character 30 minutes into the movie was really a stupid decision, not fueling it with any other characters that were half as funny as him. And then the other part was the house party sequence, which was heavily a part of the trailer, is like the early climax of the movie. And it's the most fun sequence in the whole movie. And then it's a lot of wandering around. Now, I did like the animation. I did like
Yeah.
sort of the sort of the retrograde, like
Those are the parts I'm talking about. It's like, okay, I'm liking this.
N64 graphic kind of style technology and
Yeah.
whatnot. I did like that a lot, but it was also a movie too. Kyle Mooney's got to start with SNL. It feels like a sketch, and it feels like a
That's a
sketch that was
perfect way to that
stretched
second
out.
half of that movie. Once you get past the like knockoff Superbad movie, that's how that movie felt. That's a perfect way to describe it. A knockoff SNL sketch from 2000s.
Absolutely. And also way too many to an excessive point. Another point about needle drops. Too many 90s needle drops that
God,
feel
man.
weightless. Like in that a lot of wrong in that movie too, which is unfortunate because if you haven't seen Brigsby Bear, that was a deceptively great movie about like a guy who spent his entire
Yep.
life in front of the television. I don't want to get into it and ruin it, but coming off of that to this, like, and Jonah Hill produced it too. It's like the weaker mid 90s movie.
Yeah.
That being said, if you are
Wow.
ready, Dom, if you are ready, Dom.
I guess Y2K is very lucky that I didn't watch it because it would probably have made this from the way you guys are talking about it. So this is the first time I've ever had to preface this and actually spill the secret to you guys. Have you guys noticed that my number 5 is always far and away very different from the rest of the other four,
Yeah.
both best and
Sure.
worst? Okay, so that's going to be tested to the absolute limit here with my number 5, which is Maxine,
Wow.
directed
Okay.
by Ty West. This is a really disappointing movie, and I don't think it was very good at all. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. It's a lot of set pieces that really are just hobbled together and should have been at least a good movie, but it wasn't that at all. It just wasn't. I and it sucks because it's one of those tragic is a strong word, but it makes you feel bad because all the ingredients are there for a really good movie, and it's just not. It just absolutely isn't. Like, what is Giancarlo what is Gus Fring doing here, right? What's Kevin Bacon doing? Why is he the bad guy for like 50% of this movie? It
Yeah.
feels like probably
Why is
more.
Bobby Cannavale and Michelle Mohan, like, are they cops? Like, why are they bumbling around and they've not even used?
Funny enough, their function I do get. That's like I feel like I know the movie Ty West is trying to make, but and credit to him, I don't know how to make a movie, but like everything else in between just is not meshing. right? It's like it's like using glue on this action figure all over it, and then it just falls apart. And then by the end of the movie, you just have this big mush of limbs and body parts. I guess literally in the sense of this murder. But in terms of and look, the the fact that we had two really good movies in this trilogy beforehand certainly doesn't help the situation. I guess I can divorce that for to really be objective about this, but that certainly doesn't help. And I honestly, I think we mentioned this in the review that Maxine feels the most different to Pearl and X. Like those Pearl and X, honestly, those feel like two of the same movie, just set in different time zones. Not obviously not exactly, but very, very similar. Whereas Maxine is doing a whole new thing. It's trying to be this epic serial killer, personal vengeance, running away from your past kind of thing, all at once. And then like the scope in this movie is like quadruple, and it just does not come together, and it really really hurts, which sucks because this was Ty West's redemption trilogy. His first two movies were redemptions. He'll and credit to him, he'll always have that, going from I can't get my name Alan Smithied in this disaster to X and Pearl. Hell yeah, dude. I'm looking forward to your next one after Maxine because I think he's Maxine out. But yeah, dude, it really sucks.
Yeah, I liked Maxine for the most part, save for the third act. I will say, the third act, I think it does a lot wrong. But I'm not going to criticize anybody who was very let down by that movie
Yeah.
too, in a lot of ways,
Great
because
opening scene. Great, like, yeah, I can see. Yeah, sorry, I cut you off, but just it can come together. It just didn't.
I was gonna say too, if I had to do a top five disappointed of 2024, that would probably be on there for me. I don't know where, but that would definitely be the movie on there.
yeah, I could see that. Even though I was the most positive of the three of us, I could definitely add that to my list too.
Yeah.
Time. We already got the Zoom sponsored intermission creeping up on us. Let's continue with my number four. My number four worst film of 2025. Spared y'all from reviewing it. Is Harold and the Purple Crayon. You knew you weren't going to get out there without a Harold and the Purple Crayon rant. I'll take the final 8.5 minutes. Nah, I promise I won't be that long. Uh, I've made no secret that I love Harold and the Purple Crayon, and I feel like I'm the only one of my age group that really grew up with it, having DirecTV, because it's based on a 1955 children's book by Crockett Johnson. Now that's an old book. That's an old book that really wasn't even truly part of our reading, material as kids. But how I always knew it was an HBO family show in 2001 that lasted for a season, which is remarkably actually on DVD and affordable too. And I loved it. It was an animated show about a kid who looked a lot like Caillou. He was like the more intellectual Caillou with a purple crayon, and he didn't talk. It was all narration, and whatever he drew came to life. And for years, they talked about making an adaptation for this movie. At one point, DreamWorks was going to do it. At another point, Spielberg himself was going to do it.
Oh
There
wow.
was a lot of names attached to this. I remember being back in high school in like 2010, 2011, and it was supposed to come out that year, never did. And then finally, I remember like at the start of last year seeing that it was on the calendar, and I'm like, it ain't gonna happen. It's live action too. I'm like, it's not gonna happen. Sure enough, it does. And silly me for hoping that a film adaptation that's ostensibly been in development since Christ lost its sandals was gonna be something worth seeing, because this thing truly sucks. For whatever reason, they decided to make Harold a full-grown adult, which is weird. It's so weird, and especially with Zachary Levi in the title role, this feels like a man-child version of Shazam in a lot of ways. And essentially, what it does, the opening is great. You know why? Because the opening's fucking animation. But the opening sequence is really good, and the setup is decent because it's all about Crockett Johnson, like, who never had kids. Him and his wife could not have kids, so he created Harold in the book series in order to be his son. And he guides Harold and stuff, and like encourages him to draw with the purple crayon in the opening scene. And he talks to him. He's like God for Harold. Well, then one day God stops talking to him. Crockett stops talking to Harold. Crockett Johnson passed away in the 80s. And essentially, Harold draws a portal to the real world to go and find his creator. That's the plot. So they at least justified why he's an adult in so many ways aging, and then losing his ultimate creator. But that's about where the creative level of this movie stops. You've got Lil Rel Howery and Tanya Reynolds, who play Moose and Porcupine, who were very minor characters in the show and in the book, who are playing their live action counterparts. You have a lot of silliness that just looks really bad. It's like a bad family comedy, given the fact that these are all characters that should be kids or should be animals that are actually adult human beings. It feels desperate. It doesn't feel connected to the original series at all in any way, shape, or form. There's one good scene, and it's in the trailer. There's one good scene, and it's set in a grocery store where a kid's riding one of those coin-operated mechanical helicopter things, and Harold draws real-life propellers on top of the helicopter, and then the thing takes off. There's one good scene. That's the only good scene in this thing, because also, too, it's scored to the song Stop the Rock by Apollo 440. Which I remember, this is a very Chicago reference. They still play that song at Chicago Wolves games. So that was very nostalgic for me. But other than that, there was no logic in transporting this to the real world. And it really sucks too, because I think that Captain Underpants, the animated movie, that was the blueprint for Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Yeah.
That was the blueprint. Give $30 million. You're not going to want to break the bank on this thing because you're not going to get your ROI back. And the same was this. This movie bombed. $30 million, make it an animated movie, and give it to somebody who had some sort of connection with the material, or at least read the book, or at least harbor some sort of genuine nostalgia. Not Sean Levy, with all due respect. But this movie is really a gun for hire work of something that was truly a lovely, lovely story that was full of imagination and creativity and curiosity. Because obviously, Harold drawing a bunch of stuff, he got into a lot of trouble or got into a lot of problems, but he didn't have parents in the book or the show. So he had to kind of figure it out on his own. Like if he got lost, he'd draw a river and then follow the stream. Like it was almost like teaching kids, like in a way, like problem solving in a very imaginative way as a kid. Yeah, this movie was awful. And I remember we were going to review it on the show, a little bit of a time conflict, more significant movies and more interesting things. I think we reviewed Alien instead, Romulus.
We did,
I think
yeah.
we reviewed Alien Romulus instead, which I have no complaints about. This thing sucked. Number 4 on my worst list, Harold and the Purple Crayon. And hopefully it's the last time I bring up that
Zachary Levi in the poster looks like he was airbrushed by a purple crayon, dude. Like that's a hell of a, I don't know. I'm just glad I didn't watch that one either, to be frank.
I don't want to shortchange Joe with only 3 minutes till our first Zoom-sponsored intermission, but when we come back here, Joe has got his 4th worst movie of the year. The lists keep on going. I love this show. It's starting off with a bang. We will be back here in roughly 60 to 90 seconds with more of the worst of 2024 right here on Sleepless with Steve.
Moody as hell, although I guess I could actually see what was going on because it was daytime. Yeah. Yeah, dude.
That should be the
all
quote
these
on the
symptoms.
poster. Yeah.
I think Chris Evans is really the only one really putting something into it.
Yeah.
And even when I'm saying like The Rock isn't putting anything into it, what I'm saying is that I know he's trying. He's trying by his standard of trying, but it really doesn't come across as anything interesting.
No,
I'm sorry.
It really doesn't, because it's like I said at the start.
He's a Boy Scout. He's like a Boy Scout, but it's not Boy Scout. It's like it's not like
Captain America is a Boy Scout, because like
right.
The way Steve Rogers is as a Boy Scout is that, he has his code, he sticks to it, he's stoic. But
a man out of time.
But he has that element to him that makes him interesting. He's a man from a different time, so he has a different view from how the future Iron Man looks at things. That's what always made like kind of like their little rivalry together so interesting. But the thing that always made Steve Rogers had this edge to him. At least it was, hey, when it came time to get stuff done, he'll fight dirty. He'll say something funny. Like there was something to him. There's nothing. There's nothing here with the character that he plays called Drift. There's really not. I mean, it's
what's the point of calling him Drift? That's so stupid.
It probably sounded badass. That's why they just ran.
You know what sounds badass? Jack O'Malley.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
That sounds way more badass than Drift.
Oh man,
dude, this feels like Elon Musk wrote this movie, dude. I'm not even joking. Imagine like Elon Musk is getting high on whatever he takes, ketamine, and he's like, "Yeah, dude." So it's like The Rock and Captain America, and they go on this adventure to fight a woman.
Fight a woman.
And they save Santa Claus, and it's J.K. Simmons, but
Because-
it's Jack Santa Claus. Yeah, dude. And Santa Claus is like somersaults when he's delivering presents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That last 5 minutes. It's just like I was like, okay, I'm gonna wrap this shit up. Okay.
Okay. Spoiler: no one cares. The last 5 minutes is.
To quote Daryl Singletary, we're having too much fun. Back from our Zoom-sponsored intermission, this is Sleepless with Steve, live in living color on this Wednesday evening. It's the worst of 2024. Moving right along. Want to give Joe the floor after I just expounded for 5 minutes about Harold and his godforsaken purple crayon that made my worst of 2024 list. Joe, you're number 4.
My number 4 is another movie that started out the year with similar to Steve's number 5 pick with Bob Marley there. We just had a lot of bad movies kind of kick off the year, especially in January, February. And Argyle was definitely another one of those. My number 4 pick is Argyle, directed by Matthew Vaughn. You can watch it on Apple TV. And if you really want to know, Dua Lipa is only in the first 5 minutes. There, I just saved you all the time in the world. And so that way you're good to go. Dude, man, like, I still have faith in Matthew Vaughn, but I think Matthew Vaughn needs to work with a blueprint. Because if you give this guy all the stuff he wants to do and create something on his own, he'll create something like Argyle. He'll create something like whatever the hell the prequel to Kingsman was called.
The King's Man.
There we go, The King's Man. This movie it's a mess, man. From the twist after twist after twist after twist turns that they have, that it just gets exhausting after a while, to the like stacked cast of people that really get nothing to do or play just very caricature villains, heroes, whatever it may be. I love Sam Rockwell. He's like one of my favorite actors ever, and he's given really nothing to do here. I also love Bryce Dallas Hall. I think she's great in stuff I've seen her in. Nothing to do here. Henry Cavill is just deadpan throughout the whole movie of, yes, it's me, Henry Cavill. Look, I'm in your imagination. Aren't I hot? Aren't I sexy? Here I am killing a man. It's just that the whole movie. Bryan Cranston's probably the biggest waste here. It's like, man, we should really utilize Bryan Cranston in the villain role a bit more. And then you watch a movie like this and be like, we should really let Bryan Cranston play villains when they're run by Vince Gilligan, because apparently, like, he can't do it otherwise without the guy. That damn cat is probably the best actor in this movie, and that damn cat deserves more credit because they had to sit around and deal with the production of this shit show. I feel so sorry for them. I know it's a Nepo baby cat, all right? I know it's Matthew Vaughn's cat in the movie, all right? But that cat, he was the best part of the movie.
Nepo baby cat.
Like, all right, whenever that cat showed up on screen, I kind of sprung up a bit. I'm like, oh shit, what are you gonna do next? Like, it got me excited. The funniest thing in this movie, I don't know if it was done on purpose, but the character of Bryce Dallas Hall, her parents live in Chicago, and there's a hard cut to her mom's neighborhood because she's calling her mom from London or some shit. And it's look, I live in the Chicago burbs. This is like fucking Naples, Florida. Where we're going. And I was just like, I remember screaming in the theater because it was just me and like 2 other people, but it was in the big ass theater too at like 11 o'clock in the morning. So I'm pretty sure those 2 people were asleep because they were old or something. I just remember just saying out loud, that ain't fucking Chicago. I was like, get out of here. The last thing I want to mention is Ariana DeBose. Oh my God. Girl, fire your agent. You don't go from being in West Side Story and being one of the best parts of West Side Story, or the best part of West Side Story to some people, to this Craven. God, man, there's another movie in there too.
Love Hurts.
Love Hurts. Yep, there's the other one. I haven't seen that movie, but I've seen those reviews. Girl, fire your agent, please. You're better than this. I've seen you in so many better things.
You got an Oscar nomination.
You got an Oscar nomination, man.
Nomination? Didn't she win?
No, I don't think so. I think
No,
it
she
went to
won
the.
because
No, she did win. No, she actually did win. Yeah.
Oh,
she
girl,
won.
yeah, you got a fire agent, please.
She won for the same role as Rita Moreno.
That's right. You're right. Yeah,
True.
that's right. I thought she was only nominated, but
Yeah,
yeah,
duh.
that's
Because I, yeah, because I said love hurts because between him and between her and Kiwi Kwan, I said this has got to be the worst movie made by two Oscar
two
winners in
Oscars.
the headlining role.
Oh, Wish.
That's
I'm like, there was
so
an
true.
animated movie she was in, Wish, the Disney animated movie. Like, yeah, man, I really hope you find a better agent or something because you gotta get back at the stuff like West Side Story. You're better than this. That is my number 4 pick is Argyle.
Argyle, fuck
Only your number
yourself.
4.
Oh,
Only
my
your
number
number 4,
4.
huh?
We are getting a Kingsman 4. I just looked it up. We
Sure,
are
of
going to
course
get a
we are.
Kingsman 4, which I would have hated to see the series go out on the Kingsman.
Yeah.
So I will hold out hope. Maybe one of the last people to hold out hope that Kingsman Blue Blood, whenever it's released, will
What
be
the
something
fuck,
worth
dude? Is
seeing.
that Blue Blood?
I know, I know, I know, I know. I like the Kingsman. I like the Kingsman series, and I was deeply disappointed by this. But at least credit to Vaughn for respecting one of the least respected animals in cinema.
Hey, look, Tom Selleck might be a fucking Kingsman if it's called Blue Blood. Then I don't know.
I was thinking the same joke, but I didn't know if you guys were gonna get it.
Whenever
All
you're ready,
right.
Dom, I'm good to go.
My number 4 movie is Borderlands, directed by Eli Roth. What?
Choice?
Yeah, this was a movie. Honestly, the best part was how good the makeup and hair and like some of the CGI was. I was very much impressed by that. It's like, hey, if this movie came out in when the first Borderlands came out, or like a couple years, like in what 2009 or whatever. If this movie came out, I think it would be a lot better received. Honestly, the fact that this movie was made, it was done as a tie-in for the announcement of Borderlands 4. That's why it was. I don't know if that's why it was made, but that's what the timing was. So that's the effect it was supposed to have. It's like, hey, yeah, look at this big hit, Borderlands. Also, we're announcing Borderlands 4. Well, now they just announced Borderlands 4, or they did last year. They announced it with the worst possible rollout just because it's got that bad taste in everyone's mouth thinking about that Borderlands movie. And yeah, this is the best bad attempt at a video game movie we have seen in a long, long time. Others just completely go off the script. At least this one had something to do with Kate Blanchett's character. Like she's acting. People say that yeah, she was actually kind of old to play at least the younger version of that character, but honestly, improvement because now it's like having her older that you're adding depth, or at least the way she was written added depth. And I don't care about the age thing. So
I didn't either because you know what? She was the best performance.
exactly, 100%. And yeah, everything else is just I feel so bad for what's her name, the girl playing Tiny Tina.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hold on, I got you.
Ariana
she
Greenblatt, was it?
Yep.
thank you. Yes, yes. For a second, I thought she was the little girl from the iCarly reboot, but it's not the same person. And I just felt bad for everyone on that cast because they were trying to a degree, but yeah, once again, the plot just does not come together at all. And it's a mess. Everyone knew it was going to be a mess. The announcement of this movie at all was like, wait, what? Borderlands hasn't been relevant since I guess the third game, which was many years before it. So yeah, I think it just makes me sad. This one doesn't even make me angry. It just makes me sad.
It did not make my list. I wonder if I would have had a connection to Borderlands at least half as strong as Harold and the Purple Crayon if it would have. Because no, I totally understand anybody's a fan of these games being pissed at that movie. I'll leave it with
Yeah.
4 words, and I think I texted you guys because we didn't review it on the show, but I texted you guys after.
Yeah, we did.
Seeing it. Oh, we did. Yeah, we did. We did review it on the show. My bad.
Oh, we
I said
reviewed
that.
it, all right.
I said that, and I was like, "That's not right at all." Garbage of the Galaxy. Uh, That's what that was. And it also leads, I still have the photo on my phone of Joe posing with the standee with the Snapchat caption, "This movie was ass."
That's my new letterbox photo. I was updating my profile and I made that my profile
With a
pic.
big smile on your face. That's one of
Got
my
my fucking
favorite photos.
Snapchat popcorn box back there.
That's one of my favorite photos of you. Yeah, Borderlands. Yeah, the less said about that one, the better. Directed by Eli Roth, PG-13 Eli Roth, and yeah, I would say he needs
Yes,
blood. He needs
that was another big part of it. I mean, look,
he was
I
basically a gun for hire.
Yeah.
yeah, that's basically what it was. Yeah.
With that, my number third worst film of 2024 is a movie called Tarot. You probably don't remember it. This was a very low key release early in 2024. Um, Tarot really should be the equivalent for those that worked on it to that job that you had for a momentary amount of time. Maybe you got a friend out of it, but nobody should include it on their resume. That's how bad this thing was. This movie is so derivative as far as horror movies are concerned. And I've seen enough lousy horror movies in the last like 15 years to really see where this movie's trying to steal from. It's a little Ouija, the first one. It's a little Ouija, it's a little Truth or Dare. It's a little like The Darkness, a Blumhouse movie. And what sticks out from the very beginning about this movie is it just has such an utter lack of ambition. And it's so overrun with like 6 or 7 characters that they don't attempt to humanize at all. The award, if they gave out a Razzie, and I'm not a big fan of the Razzies, but I do think this should be a Razzie award, like the worst character in a movie. It's Jacob Batalon in this movie. You remember him from the recent Spider-Man trilogy, No Way Home, Far From Home, Homecoming.
Yeah.
He's awful he's completely embarrassing in this movie, largely because of the script. They render him so obnoxious in this thing and loud and like roly-poly. It's almost like dropping Chris Farley into a horror movie, and it kills so much of the momentum of this thing. This movie, I swear, this movie was written with such low ambition and such a low opinion of itself. Its ceiling was like a inoffensive 2-star Final Destination clone under the best of circumstances. And it's an ugly looking movie that has like the impact of a county fair haunted house. It's howlingly bad in terms of writing, in terms of performances too. There's a couple of set pieces in this movie that are somewhat interesting. There's like one of those magician saw boxes in the movie with like a costumed Abraham Lincoln. But the problem with that, it kind of looks like The Purge. There's another movie it rips off. It kind of looks like The Purge, but it's also so fucking dark at some points that you can't really tell what's going on, which is one of my largest pet peeves of a movie is when it's too dark. And you can't really tell what's going on with this thing.
Nothing worse than watching a shitty movie, but a shitty movie you can't see.
You can't see. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. There's nothing worse than watching a bad movie that's hard to see. It's like putting on 3D glasses. That darken the movie. No, there's a lot of problems with this thing. It's just in a year that was really great with horror movies, overrun with really notable horror movies like Late Night with the Devil and Longlegs. This thing is pathetic. It almost comes. It's almost like a relic from like 2012 when horror wasn't in the greatest spot, or like when that era of like Halloween, Friday the 13th. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of era when there was a ton of remakes and reboots.
Dude.
And if it wasn't a remake or a reboot, it was an Exorcist, supernatural kind of a movie.
Yeah.
It's like a relic from 10 years ago. It's bad, Taro. This is a movie. This is like there's made for TV movies, there's made for Tubi movies. Number 3 on my worst list, Taro.
When it comes to horror movies nowadays, it's, we're kind of living in a golden age where they're getting more and more creative. I mean, look at our best of lists if you don't believe us. We name drop a few of them on there. And it's like when you come out and you only have this to show, something like Tarot. I didn't see it, but because it just looks so bad. But when you get something like Tarot, or even like, I don't even know, another bad horror movie, because honestly, I can't remember the last time I really saw one that pissed me off that bad. Yeah, I mean, like, when you see that stuff, it's just like, oh, wow, like, you really are that bad, because you just stand out more than ever now.
Even Wolfman's not great. That was
Oh,
probably
yeah.
that movie was more disappointing than anything. That's another movie. That
Yeah.
was I talk about Tarot being dark. Wolfman is one of the darkest movies. Like in terms, like that's part of its downfall. I thought was just how fucking dark that thing was.
Yeah. Moving on to my number 3. My number 3, and I actually rewatched this movie because I had to make sure. I'm like, did I really think that movie was bad? Because I actually had a few people tell me, dude, no, that movie's actually funny. You're wrong. Like, it like, just, you obviously went in just kind of angry towards it. So I was like, all right, let me give it another chance. My number 3 is Unfrosted, directed by Jerry Seinfeld. It's on Netflix, but so is the show Seinfeld, and I recommend watching that. Uh, so I went back and I rewatched this movie again. Unfortunately, Steve wasn't here during the review of it, but I remember Dom and I just shared like how many times we laughed, and I think it was maybe one time we laughed, because this movie just kind of felt like what we know Adam Sandler does with his friends from time to time with his worst comedies, and that is invite a bunch of his friends onto a set of a movie so they can go travel somewhere. They'll shoot a couple scenes and then they'll probably, hang out afterwards. That's kind of what this felt like without the glorious destination. Instead, you're in an office and a warehouse throughout the entire movie. The movie is about the creation of the Pop-Tart. Jerry Seinfeld plays the man who created it. He works at Kellogg's. And it's about them trying to rival other cereal companies and their mascots and everything. And, as I'm just watching it the second time, did I laugh more? Not really. I don't know if I laughed less, and all I can remember is one joke I actually liked in the movie. But all it is, it really just, when you boil this movie down, it is just a bunch of cameos to come in and play either famous figures at Kellogg's or in the cereal world, or famous mascots, and that's basically it. I mean, there's a Chef Boyardee character, and he makes a ravioli that comes to life and talks and goes in the vents and does stuff and pops throughout the movie as a talking ravioli. I got nothing. I really have nothing else more to say about this movie. Like, it tries to parody the space race with it, with the whole thing, and it's like within there is a funny parody of a movie to be made. There really is. I can see the linings there. I just don't think Jerry Seinfeld really had the edge to make it funny.
Yeah.
And that's weird, because around the time this movie came out, and again, I'm not trying to make this a political thing or anything. I'm not trying to play this into my perspective of the movie. I was still willing to give this movie a chance, but when he talked about how like, oh, you can't make comedies anymore because people are so sensitive and everything, but then I watched this movie and it's like, Jerry, I don't think you could just, you're saying you can't make comedies anymore because people are sensitive. Dude, I don't think you can just make comedies anymore because I don't think you got that in you. Like, I go and I watch Julia,
Louis Dreyfus.
Thank you. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna fumble her name. And I watched her show Veep, and it's like that recently just ended, and she kills it in that show. And it's just like, it's like, it's funny, it's edgy in that show. It knows to push the limit on the perfect amount of times and everything.
Yeah, Jerry, I don't think you can make comedies. Period. Like, you just can't do it.
Yeah, man, and it's got Melissa McCarthy and no, not Melissa McCarthy. It's got Amy Schumer, and that to me is already just like, oh man, you put her in a movie, and it's like, dude, I'm not trying to harp on her as much as everybody else because I know like a lot of people target her. Fuck, does she make it hard to not target her when she's in shit like this and performs the way she does?
Every major actor in that movie is capable of being a good actor.
Yeah.
But they all play into their worst tendencies, their worst roles, types of roles. It's what you expect them to be made fun of.
Yeah.
And you were enforcing that argument.
There's a Storm the Capitol joke in this involving the mascots storming Kellogg's. And that's basically just the joke. It's just them storming the Capitol and just recreating footage you've seen on the news. It's really not that funny. To the people who said that this movie was funny, I don't know. Maybe you just were high. I guess I don't know. Like, and you just were eating Pop Tarts
Maybe you
while
didn't
being
get your
high.
Medicare check, man. I don't know.
I don't know, man. For me, this just wasn't it.
No, it's one of those movies that throws so much at the wall that very little sticks. I will say there's two scenes that I did laugh in that movie. I thought Bill Burr was terrific as JFK. And
Yes.
there's a thinly veiled Marilyn Monroe joke in the movie that's very funny. And then there's the Doublemint twins in the White House, which I really
Yeah.
thought was funny. And then there's Kyle Dunnigan as Walter Cronkite. And there's the scene that I mean, talk about a one star movie with like a 4-star scene. I'm not gonna lie, I laughed loudly and longly at that scene with Walter Cronkite with Silly Putty. I thought
That
that
is
was
that was a funny scene. Yeah.
the whole that like I make the money, I'll drink whatever the fuck I want, like that was fun. A lot of
I make
truck,
the money and
lot
I
of truck.
drink whenever fuck I want.
I
Whatever he says to he's like, a lot of trouble in my life, Billy. A lot of turbulence.
the
Talking to his
Madman
producer.
the Mad Men cameo. I mean, that's because I watched Mad Men. I thought that was done effectively well. But like the entire time I was watching this again for the second time, all I thought to myself is, "Shit, man! Like I know, like I think you both weren't crazy about this movie, but I did enjoy it. But the Weird Al Yankovic like biopic comedy,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the kind of energy you
There it
kind of
is.
need to bring to something to this. Honestly,
Yeah, that's like the best example of that, or Pop Star,
yeah.
or something like that.
Oh my
where,
god, dude, yeah. If you got Lonely Island to help out with this, I think the
Yeah,
section
it's
probably
like
would have been better.
where you kind of have
all
like a
three
mockudrama.
all three of those movies are like they're all on a level of unseriousness and ridiculousness and silliness. It really just comes down to what the minutia of it all, the jokes. It's
Yeah.
like what is working with Weird Al Yankovic getting assassinated at his Grammys acceptance speech by the cartel, right? But it's not working with Jerry Seinfeld making a Pop Tart. Like what's happening there? What's the who's dropping the ball? And
There's
it's
a
got to be
thesis. There's
yeah,
a
it's got
thesis
it's
there.
that's my film school thesis. But no, it's got to be something with the writers. All four writers at this damn movie couldn't make one joke to save their life. Jesus Christ.
Whenever you're ready, Dom.
All right, my number 3 is Red One. Uh,
I had the privilege of not seeing this one.
yeah, this is not a good movie. It is not a good Christmas movie. It is not a good rock vehicle. It is not a good Chris Evans performance. It is not a good It's not good for the culture. It really isn't. If Kendrick Lamar is 10, good for the culture, this is like Red One. This is what this is. It honestly is. And it just made me upset. It made me upset because I'm thinking about all the good Christmas movies that have been made. Jingle All the Way, for whatever reason, is my number one. I think that's my favorite Christmas movie of all time. I think I've said that before, right?
Yes.
And something really grounding about it. I think that was the issue, is that this movie was too over budgeted for its own damn good. It's trying to have the action sequences of Fast and Furious, the
Yeah.
grandioseness of, like, I don't know, what's another Christmas epic that looks very expensive? I don't know, Polar Express? No, I don't know. But and it's just that the heart is buried underneath the worst tendencies of what these actors are known for. What these actors are known for, particularly Rockin' Evans. And that's really disappointing to see, because I know each of these, the three with J.K. Simmons included, Lucy Liu, I know all of them can play against type, and they're not. And it sucks because I always say that more movies need to play it straight. Well, this one played it really straight, but there was no hint of, like, comedy at all. That's the issue, right? This isn't trying to be a parody. Maybe you could very, very vaguely say that it's a parody, and then, oh, hey, what if Santa was real and, like, realistic? But he's really not. And they also try to expand this expanded universe where Lucy Liu is, like, in charge of this agency that handles mythical creatures, and I'm like, stop it. No, you're losing sight of what's important, which I don't even know what is important to this movie, but there's no plot, so I can't deduce it. And there is a plot, but it's so messy, unfocused, bloated, and really annoying to watch. I was in the hallway to the exit, still watching. I watched it to the credits, but I was in the hallway in those last like 10 minutes where they're like celebrating, and it's really unfortunate. It really was unfortunate. Go watch Jingle All the Way.
I've not seen it, but on the plus note, the movie cost over $250 million to make and is currently, well, it's out of theaters now, so this is its haul. 185 million was its gross.
Damn.
So
That's
they lost their ass on it, at least, if nothing else.
could have
And
been should have been worse. Should have been a bigger
And it's
deficit.
wild to me, and this is just goes into the business of movies again because I can't comment on anything, but it's wild to me how they can spend literally $250 million with a B dollars on something that isn't an IP, something that isn't recognizable, something that's completely original and as bad as looking as this thing was.
But
I wish it
Kylie
was a bigger
Acme got
bomb. That
scrapped.
way I wish this was a like a really, really big bomb. That way we could have gotten like a documentary behind it. Because I
Like
want to effing know
like an Oogie
what,
Loves level bomb, yeah.
yeah, what was who was thinking here? What was going like Jake Kasdan is the son of Lawrence Kasdan, who made Empire Strikes Back. And that breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart. And which I understand you have that weight. I know Jake Kasdan has that weight on him. That's tough. That's hard to follow. But I don't know. There's something about this that it makes it's like a seething anger. I don't know what it is. Because I mean, look, that's putting way too much value on this movie. I get it. I'm being facetious to a degree, but it's like, yeah, man. The more I think about this movie and what I saw, it just makes me more upset. I don't know.
I don't know
Glad I
what's
missed it.
worse. I don't know what's worse. The fact that like on our best of list we had like plenty of bleed over, or the fact of our worst of list has no bleed over so far.
Isn't it funny?
Like, oh man, was it really that bad last year?
We hit the hat trick on the substance last
Yeah,
time
we did.
on
We
the best
did.
of.
And we're just going all over the place, and I guarantee my final two aren't on your list too, which is gonna be even more fun. So, continuing on, my number two worst film of 2024 is a little movie called Not Another Church Movie.
Oh my god, I forgot this came out.
This came out in May, I believe, in May 2024. And this had a pretty decently substantial release of about 1,500 theaters for a parody movie. This is a parody of Tyler Perry movies. In 2024, where Tyler Perry's movies are now relegated to Netflix, and he's also now making movies about like an interracial relationship centered around jazz, and also like the all black, all female women's battalion in World War II, where he himself has kind of graduated to a level of filmmaking that is, he's still kind of making, the same sort of melodramas he's always made, but he's also experimenting with bigger stories. This is a movie that feels like it should have come out. Honestly, never, but it should have come out in like 2013, 2012, when Tyler Perry was still experiencing a lot of box office success. There hasn't been a Tyler Perry movie released in theaters now in about, I want to say 5 years, 6 years, something like that. This movie feels remarkably dated. And also, I've been subjecting myself to parody movies long enough to realize that in the realm of comedy, there are very few things that are sadder. Even Jerry Seinfeld's Pop-Tart movie doesn't qualify as this low. There's very few things that are sadder than a parody movie that is worse than its targets. And it's
Yeah.
worse than what it's parodying. This movie succeeds. As somebody who has seen all but maybe 3 Tyler Perry movies, this is worse than Tyler Perry's worst movies, like Medea's Witness Protection,
Boo
Temptation,
2.
Boo 2. This is worse than those. This is the level. I'm going to throw a parody movie out. I don't even know if you guys remember it or even heard of it. This is on the level of the 41-year-old virgin who knocked up Sarah Marshall and felt super bad about it. That's the level that this movie is on. Look it up. I promise you
Jesus.
that's a real movie. Uh, Not Another Church movie, though. This is the kind of movie that like Mad Libs names. So like Oprah Winfrey is Hopra Windfall. Tyler Perry is Taylor Harry in this movie. And so this is already the level of comedy we're working with here. Jamie Foxx plays God. Another side note, I can't believe Jamie Foxx
That's
is in
kind of
this
funny
thing.
to me. That offhand, that sounds funny.
Mickey Rourke is the devil, for what that's worth. This is also a movie too that's not only not funny, but it's fucking boring. Like it's an hour and a half, and it's just not exciting at all. It's so lethargically made. It looks incredibly cheap. There's no intention of developing nor sticking with any kind of story, let alone trying to milk any subplot for humor. So like worse than the worst Tyler Perry movie, which is like four concurrent stories going on, and then like there's one scene talking about God's plan for everything, and then the next thing is Medea shooting a gun into the sky. Like worse than that. There's at least, I think I counted, kind of glazing over my review again. There's like there's 7 subplots in this movie. This whole thing is like a stew of garbage, and it's crazy to me that not only we get a Tyler Perry movie that's like almost 14 years too late, but we get a movie like this that also has the title Not Another in it too, which
Mhm.
never became a trend outside of Not Another teen movie. There's not another movie. I'll leave you to figure that one out for yourself. But this is abject garbage. It's actually, and to give you an idea how bad the worst movies of the year are, I've given out, I think, 11 or 12 half-star reviews. I gave out 2 this year. And Not Another Church Movie has the ignominious honor of being one of them. It's number 2 on my worst list of the year. Would have been number 1 last year. That's how bad this thing was.
That
Wow.
director that movie you said, the 40-year-old virgin who knocked up Sarah Marshall, yada yada yada. That director also made 30 Nights of Paranormal Activity with the devil inside, the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch that one. I had
Yeah.
I
How
still
could you not
sleep at
watch the
night.
sequel? Maybe it's better.
Yeah. Yeah, that 41-year-old virgin movie, that one is worse than like Judd Apatow's even recent output.
Jesus Christ.
It's a musical too.
Oh, what the
There's a soundtrack.
Oh, we got 7 minutes.
I think you got enough time, do you?
One
Yeah,
more
I
for you,
do.
Joe.
I
You
think
can do it.
I think I can even do it, and maybe even squeeze Dom's number 2 in here. My number 2 is another movie that came out in February. Please put your hands together for my favorite bad movie of the year, the one I love to rewatch from time to time and show people. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, coming down the aisle right now, Madame Web. Oh
Oh
man,
yeah.
dude.
Okay.
Look, yes, this is a bad movie. This shows, I mean, this and another movie that came out this year show the greed that Sony had with these license of the comic book properties. Because they had jack shit here. But you know what they did? They, hold on, I need my prop here. Give me a
Oh
second.
no.
Okay, it's not here. Oh, here it is. What they did is Sony, they jingle these keys in front of you, and they say spider and man and all these other things, but they can't say Spider-Man together, and they can't say Peter Parker together. So they can say those things separately, and they continue to jingle the keys in front of you, and you go like, see, it's like the Spider-Man movies. We can't say it legally, but it's there. Meanwhile, Joker 2 does something original. Don't get me wrong, not a good movie that much, but it does something original, something I can appreciate. And y'all call that the worst comic book movie of the year? Are you fucking kidding me? Like I said, this is my favorite bad movie of the year, but this is dog shit. All right, like there ain't no way around it. Joker 2 compared to this, Joker 2 is at least trying to do something. I don't care what you can tell me. You can tell me all these other things that, like, it did this to its audience, it betrayed the audience that it set
Has a
up and
vision.
everything. It at least had a vision. Thank you, Steve. It did. Madam Web had nothing. Madam Web had money balls and money signs in its eyes, man. They wanted to chase the dollar as much as possible. I feel bad. I feel bad for everybody involved in this movie because it makes them look terrible. Dakota Johnson, if you thought she was flat and boring in those 50 Shades of Grey movies, you haven't seen nothing yet, man. Sydney Sweeney, God bless her for saying, I did it for the paycheck, because you know what? Mad respect. And hey, It actually turned out later on she did this so she can get that other movie with Glenn Powell produced, Much Ado About Nothing. It's based on that play.
Anyone But You.
Anyone But You. Thank you. Yeah, it's based on
For a
that
second,
play.
I thought you said Madam Web is based on Much Ado About Nothing.
No,
Like, oh my god.
no. Man, that would be something. Isabella Merced. I mean, she's going on to be in the DC universe. She was in Alien Romulus. Amazing actress. Always said that ever since I saw in Dora and everything. But you would never believe that any of these people could be remotely good. If you saw this movie and this was the first time you were seeing any of them, you would be like, you know, no, these people must be terrible actors because this is awful. The villain, by far one of the worst comic book villains I've ever seen. I don't know if the guy couldn't speak English that well because he is a telenovela actor, if I'm correct. If not, correct me in the comments or something. But they had to dub over his voice multiple times throughout this movie, and it doesn't help his performance, and it just makes the lines he reads sound that much worse. This is greed at its best. And there's only a movie that came out later this year that I thought was greedier, and it was a bigger slap in the face, honestly, I think, to its fan base. And we'll get there eventually, but that is my number 2 pick, Madam Web.
Since we don't have, I don't want to shortchange Dom here. I'll just add on and briefly say too, this movie had probably the worst press rollout of any movie this year, at least optically speaking, because before the press tour even commenced, Dakota Johnson fired her agent, and that made bigger headlines. This was
Ariana DeBose, take notes, do that.
I think it was about a year. It was a year ago this weekend that movie Madam Web came out, and it was about 2 weeks before it did, early February, late January, that she fired her agent. And then I remember reading something on, it was Twitter's still good for gems every now and then. It was like, do you want to revive physical media? Get the Madam Web cast wine drunk and record a commentary of Madam Web and put it on the Blu-ray. And
I would buy that.
That would absolutely sell. Get the director, get Sweeney, get Dakota Johnson, and get them on, have them drink wine, maybe a picture-in-picture thing, and do a commentary over it. And also, this didn't make my list, but at the end of the day, though, it really is. It's one of those movies too that, like, you can tell that more than half of that thing was shot on blue screen, in front of a blue screen.
Yeah.
Like it's noticeable. We talk about how, like, the superhero special effects in superhero movies have really dwindled in the last several years. That's a movie where it shows, man. Like, the budgetary restrictions on that thing show.
It felt like a movie that was just sent out there to die. Like, it was just like,
Yeah.
well, we got to put you out there. We just have to.
It was rough. It was a rough one. We will come back. Dom will give his second worst of the year. We will give our final 5 of our respective lists, and then we will give our big one, our worst film of 2024. Still more to get to on Sleepless with Steve. We'll be back in about 16 to 90 seconds. Don't go 60 to 90 seconds. I'll say it right that time. Don't go anywhere. It's Sleepless with Steve too.
You did?
I actually said they're Romulus and Remus cosplaying Beavis and Butthead.
Like, they're not, but again, it's not like they're really that bad. It's just like, okay, like, you know, they're actors and they're doing their best job with everything they're given. It's just
they
that
kind of looked like those feral cretins from Fury Road, actually.
he did actually, yeah. No, honestly, they reminded me of that. They reminded me a little bit like the War Boys or those guys as well.
War Boys. I couldn't think of the name.
The only person here that really I feel like has an arc, and you're interested to see where their alliance is and how their story's going to play out, is Denzel Washington's character. And it's mainly because, one, the backstory that he has at the beginning of the movie and what you find out, but two, the longer the movie goes on, you wonder if his interests are in best favor for Paul Mescal, for Lucius, or for himself. And, you know, as the movie plays out, you slowly discover what. And, I mean, one, Denzel Washington, I mean, he's going to act his ass off. He's a high caliber actor. He's one of the best there is out there. And he's acting circles around almost everybody else in scenes that he is. And I've seen people say, well, there's moments in the movie where he just acts like Denzel. But you know what? It added so much more character to his character. Because everybody else is so serious and everything that no one really stands out, I feel like. Like, even though I thought Pedro Pascal, like, great performance, he doesn't stand too far apart in terms of, like, oh, what did he bring compared to Paul Mescal? It's like, really not that much. They just brought a good serious performance. It's good enough for what this movie needs them to be. But Denzel, I feel like, just him sometimes acting like Denzel, but also having that dramatic flair to him as well. He brought something to this movie that, at least beginning to end, I was always glued to the screen when he was. When he wasn't on and there wasn't any action happening, my mind started to wander a bit because I just kind of got bored at what I was watching play out. In terms of a revenge story, too, it's like.
Back and better than ever, it's Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube, rounding out one of our longest shows of the year. Always is, always will be. It's our worst of 2024, and Dom has got his number 2 pick.
It's like, wow, that's...
You ready, Joe? My number 2 is Argyle. Now, Argyle is it's a bad movie, but I think what's a good game is the 2005 third-person shooter, not third-person shooter from Russia with Love.
Yeah.
And it's voiced by Sean Connery. He redid all the lines from the movie. So it's an aged Sean Connery voicing himself in the game. And it's a decent game. I think it's an interesting experience just to have Sean Connery voicing himself again, because it was the first time he had done the character of James Bond since Never Say Never Again. And this was 2005, so this was the era of EA where it was like, hey, we're trying shit with our games. This is where they were, at least, yeah, they were good. I'll say EA was good during that time.
Today
were doing
they're trying
shitty
shit.
things.
They're trying to shit out my wallet. Like, it's just like,
Yes. By the 2010s, that was already set in stone, probably well before that. But at least in 2005, hey, EA Redwood Shores. Man, it's sorry, I'm getting a lot of nostalgia thinking about it. But no, it's an interesting game. There's also, so it follows the film of the film. It follows the plot of the film fairly closely. There's even a boss fight with Steve McQueen as Red Grant, just like in the movie. But it also throws in 2 characters original to the game, which is Maria Menounos. Maria Menounos is like fully face scanned into the game as an extra character next to Red Grant. So they insert her as a henchman.
Wait. Like the Nuvi?
The Nuvi girl.
Yeah, Nuvi
the
girl.
Nuvi
Or
woman.
gas station TV
I gotta go
girl.
replay this.
Yes. And then Natasha Bedingfield makes a cameo in the opening level as well. The opening level is it's a tutorial mission, but it's original. It's not, it's original to the game. It does not show up in From Russia with Love, but it's nice. It's fun. If you see it at a discount store for $10 at your disc replay or whatever, I say pick it up just to hear Sean Connery doing himself again. And it's way more action than the original movie, of course. You got the Aston Martin souped up and blowing up whole city blocks, but it's a game, so you have some fun with it. And I kind of wish they did. I know EA did try several attempts at redoing, like they tried to do a Goldfinger reboot, not Goldfinger,
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye, thank you. That's the Austin Powers movie. But tried doing GoldenEye video game reboot, but with Daniel Craig instead of Pierce Brosnan. And they just haven't been able to do it. And I think at this point, I think James Bond just needs to be like a text adventure. Or they can do like what Bethesda did with Indiana Jones.
Oh, dude, I just beat that game last night. Amazing
good?
game. Amazing.
I heard
game.
it was really good. Okay.
Absolutely amazing performance. Last performance, possibly one of the last performances from Tony Todd. Oh my God, so good.
Yeah, I if I ever come across money, then I will definitely pick that up.
Totally.
Anyway, my number 2 is Argyle. It's a bad movie.
I was gonna say too, real quick, what Harrison Ford said about Troy Baker voicing him, like this is why we don't need AI, because you got guys like him, like that can do this, that are that talented. Because yeah, man, it is spot on, his indie impression.
I can't relate to the video game discourse, but I do appreciate learning things.
Yeah, honestly, Steve, I would. Well, you don't have an original Xbox or anything, but just look into like gameplay of it or like the cutscenes, because it's like they inserted Maria Menounos next to Steve McQueen, and it's kind of weird but kind of funny at the same time. So I don't know.
I can relate because I remember seeing that game on the shelf of Family Video. I do remember that. Yes. I do finally remember that though. I never played it, but I do remember the cover vividly. I guess it's time for dishonorable mentions. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. I'll start here. I'll go as quick as I can. Number 6 for me for dishonorable mentions is Reagan, is the Ronald Reagan biopic. Um, I wrote a long review of this thing. This is a rose-colored glasses drama that has no interest in even-handed exposure of the president of the United States, the former president of the United States. This is an exercise in myth making. I will quote a really good comedian Megan Keister, what she said opening weekend of Reagan. She said, "If you're looking for a cozy, because this came out at the end of August." She said, "If you're looking for a cozy, air-conditioned place to do drugs, there's guaranteed to be an empty showing of Reagan in your area." So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it
That's
at
really
that.
good. Really good.
I thought that was a good clip. Number 7, the a worse cat movie than Argyle, the Garfield movie. This is a movie I really like the original Bill Murray movie. I think it's unfairly slandered. I think it's having rewatched it before this came out. I do think it's a well done Garfield movie. I think it's very fitting to the characters. This movie instead drops Garfield and Odie into this like cockamamie kidnapping plot that has them trying to like navigate a factory farm in pursuit of milk. This thing completely disposes the concept of Garfield as a lazy, good for nothing cat and puts him in the center of like an espionage movie. It's so bad. And it's this is another movie that's like too dark for kids. And I think we were sold a true bill of goods on this thing because the trailers showed a totally different movie than what this thing actually was. This thing really sucked. It was the worst animated movie of the year, in my opinion. You've got God's Not Dead in God We Trust at number 8. The nicest thing I can say about this movie is that it's not as loathsome nor as repugnant as God's Not Dead in God We Trust. That is the nicest thing I can say about this thing. This is yet another sequel to the long-running series that is an alarmist political screed draped in Christian wish fulfillment. That's pretty much what it is. Ray Wise does give it a little bit of credibility. I do think he's pretty good here, but overall the movie sucks. Moana 2 is my number 9. This might be my most controversial, even though I don't think Moana 2 was super well received, even by people who liked it. This movie is Jungle Book 2 level bad. It's one of those Disney sequels that was conceptualized to be a limited series on Disney Plus, and that's all you need to know about how uninspired this thing was. When you think about the gems that Disney made in the 2010s, Zootopia, Wreck-It Ralph, Moana's right up there, and those feel like distant memories. It feels like the last several years. Right around Thanksgiving, we get a Disney movie like Clockwork, and the last few, Strange World, Wish, this, have been utterly awful in different ways, and this one is just so bad, and it's deeply felt the loss of Lin-Manuel Miranda in this movie too. The songs even hijack the melodies of some of his other songs. There's a song in this movie that steals the melody from the opening song of In the Heights. It steals the exact melody.
Wow.
And you can tell that like his lack of involvement in this movie really killed it from the jump. And number 10, I teased it earlier talking about Bob Marley, One Love, it's Back to Black. This is another disgrace of a biopic too. It's passionless filmmaking here in trying to capture the life of Amy Winehouse. And again, there's another instead of talking about how bad this movie is and really disrespectful how it is in some ways to Amy Winehouse, there is a documentary that got a lot of attention, and I think even got an Oscar nomination back in 2015. It's called Amy. A24 distributed it. It's a 2-hour documentary that is like archival footage, home movies, live performances, and really stuff you'd never think you'd see of Amy Winehouse in a positive light. Like not a movie that like wallows in scenes of her like getting addicted to drugs. Like this is like her when she was young and singing and performing at like coffee shops and things like that. It's a really touching and beautifully made documentary. I highly recommend the movie Amy. I'd rather talk about that than Back to Black. Those are my dishonorable mentions of the year. We'll go for Joe. What's 6 through 10 on your list?
Oh, okay. Hold on a minute. Sorry.
I told you I was going to be quick.
Yeah. My 6 through 10, I'll also be very quick. Number 10 for me is Bob Marley, One Love. It's everything Steve covered about that movie. It's a biopic. That's about it. That's all I really can add on to that. Number 9, and there might be a disagreement here. For me, it's Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I just did not enjoy that movie. Did not have a good time with it. And the longer it sat with me, the longer I was like, you know what? I just really did not like it. Number 8.
We don't talk about how bad the new Ghostbusters movies are. We really don't.
Honestly. Is there going to be a third one? Have they announced that they're making a
I
third
think
one?
so. Technically, if what is this now? A sixth one?
Technically, yeah.
Yeah,
I
sixth
mean,
one.
nailing on this one at least. That's all I could say because I didn't think whatever that reboot one was of them in the small town was called
Afterlife.
Afterlife. I didn't think that was that bad. I actually thought that was okay at best. But like this was like the opposite direction of like, okay, like you did some things good in Afterlife, just keep going with that. Oh, okay, dude, you did everything I didn't like about Afterlife in one movie. Great job. Number 8 for me is Red One. Dom nailed it. Nothing more to add there. um, Number 7. I'm surprised this didn't pop up on your list, Steve. The Crow.
That was
I
close.
wrote I wrote in my letterbox review, if this was Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox playing the leads, this would have been really fun because this could have been considered fanfic of their romance with each other. Because like that's literally how that movie felt. Number 6 is Morbius. That's weird. I don't remember Morbius being there. Hold on a minute. Let me peel that off real quick. Oh, it's Kraven the Hunter. Oh my god, dude. My god, I would have mistaken you for Morbius for how bland and boring you were. My bad, man. And those are my 6 through 10.
Good list. I'm proud that I've only seen I think 3 of those. Dom, your dishonorable mentions.
Honestly, it's just one, and it is Joker 2. Do something better next time because it's I've said this I think a couple times already in this whole damn show, which is that you have the ingredients to make something really really good, and I it just falls apart. It just completely falls apart, and or rather, it doesn't. It never came together to actually. Okay, I'll say this. The first number is Joaquin Phoenix singing with the other, or singing by himself
Yeah.
in front of the other prison inmates in like the break room, the TV room. And I forget what the song even was, but when all he did was weakly walk around in a circle, I'm like, oh, we're not in for a good time. Please don't let this be the whole movie. And then it finally gets to something fantastical, and it's like, oh, that's all you're giving us. That's all you're giving us. And it's just so deflating to watch this thing go on, which really, really sucks. It didn't enter my top 5 for a reason, in that the dynamic between Joaquin Phoenix, between Joker and the head prison guard is
Yeah.
really really good.
Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And that's so like the scene where Brendan Gleeson hits Arthur in the back of the head after seemingly having a good moment. That's cinema, baby. That's
Yeah.
damn good movie moments right there.
There's that moment, and then when Brendan Gleeson is watching him on TV, and you can
Mm-hmm.
tell like he actually like has like some appreciation of what Arthur is doing to like for Gotham, but like because
Mm-hmm.
he's like a guard and everything, he just kind of takes full advantage of abusing
And
Arthur.
another credit to the movie, it didn't go so heavy-handed into the Batman mythos where there's like a million different
Yeah,
references to different things. It was like, okay, you had a Two-Face moment, and I think that's
it,
literally
it,
it.
it it fits so organically. Honestly, I was like, wow, okay, like you didn't crowbar it too much in there. Like it felt like okay, that actually felt right. Like
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like not one mention of Bruce Wayne, I think, right?
I
He
don't
doesn't
think
show
so,
up at
other
all in this
than
movie.
probably just the dad, whatever the hell the
Oh,
first
okay,
name is.
sure. I don't
But
know.
that's about it.
Yeah, I'm so happy that they didn't force the whole issue there too. So it's a big, big disappointment. Probably the biggest disappointment, even more than Maxine, just because
I absolutely
the
agree.
idea is so good, dude. Gaga's acted pretty damn well in this movie. I just don't know what it is that I mean. I kind of can pinpoint it, but it falls apart. It never came together, and somehow still falls apart. There.
Is that all your dishonorable mentions?
I just honestly just thinking about that one movie made me sad, so I just didn't want to go further. I'm good. That's it.
Yeah, it's a movie too that like you can tell they didn't want like they had no intention of making a sequel, but the first one made over $1 billion and they were left with like no choice. And I'm surprised they came up with as daring of a concept as they did. And I didn't hate it. I really didn't. Justice for Puddles too. I mean, that's my favorite scene in the whole movie is
Yes.
is Puddles on the stand, and just how devastating of a scene that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Um, And we were all in Lady Gaga's shoes for Luigi Mangione. I'll say that too. But but
There's a great clip. I think it's on the subreddit, on like the shitty movie subreddit, where it's like Arthur is telling Harley, it's like, or whatever, it's like, stop it, stop singing, right, when he says that part, and then the title of that clip is like, uh, Joaquin Phoenix gets to the bottom of why this movie sucked, and it's a really good joke, but it's actually, I disagree with it. I do disagree with it on a serious level, because it's the problem isn't that it's a musical. The problem is that it's not a good musical. That's it.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. Are we ready for our picks for the worst of the or the
Let's
number
go.
one worst movie of the year? Are you ready, Joe?
I got you queued up.
All right, my number one worst movie of 2024 is Vindicating Trump. I wish I had a more climactic pick, but if I'm really just judging, if I'm really just judging by the worst I saw this year, this documentary takes the cake here. I'm not going to go too long-winded on it too, because I think by now you should know what you're getting with each passing Dinesh D'Souza documentary, whether you're a fan or not. There's something admirable about him because after 2016 Obama's America came out, that's one of the biggest documentaries of all time in terms of box office gross. But like
Yeah.
each subsequent movie he's made has gotten less and less of a platform to the point now where it's like he's self-distributing and self-funding these movies to the point where they don't really make much of an impact, really, like even in the theaters. Like even his target audience has kind of tuned him out in so many ways. um but this is a movie too that is so, I don't think I've ever watched a documentary that doesn't have a single-sided fact or statistic. I'll be completely honest. I don't think I've ever watched a documentary that doesn't cite any of its claims that it makes. There's no like graphs or percentages or anything to back up anything that they're talking about in this
Not
movie.
even like an accountable person on camera.
No, there's on-camera interviews. Like he
Oh, all
actually has
right.
a sit-down interview with Donald Trump. He has a sit-down interview
Wow.
with a couple different people, but there's nothing verifiable, especially when he brings up like election fraud and the typical, you know what I mean, the typical harbinger,
Yeah.
common, armchair points. There's nothing to back these up. Like he talks about election fraud and stolen ballots. There's nothing to back that up. There's no credible evidence whatsoever, too. It's all just I feel that this was right. I was told this was right. This is clearly made. Somebody called this, one of the many negative reviews of this movie called this a cinematic fellatio, which is what would you expect? He fucking pardoned the guy. He fucking pardoned Dinesh D'Souza. He was a convicted felon, So of course he's gonna make a movie like this. I mean, that doesn't question anything whatsoever. One of the funniest things about this movie is that there's a lot of dramatizations around Democratic campaigners and constituents in this movie. And it's so funny, these like dramatizations of like these backdoor conversations by these people like you don't even know. They're not really identified. There's like a stereotypical LGBTQ plus woman. There's a stereotypical black coworker who has the mindset of a slave. And they're talking about like how to steal the election and things like that. And then there's another one that says it's not interference if we do it.
Damn.
And it's
DEI
all,
at it again.
I know. Tell me about it. Like to DEI on this hill. It's kind of sad. Like, it's funny though. Like in the documentary, there's fucking dramatizations of like these things that never happened, and like fulfilling the whole belief of people that are going to see this movie that already have their mind made up. They're not going to learn anything. They're not going to have their opinions challenged. You're silly to think, and by the end of it, like going back to my earlier point, like you're silly to think if any like statistics or sources are going to be provided in this thing. Just as silly as you are to kind of like spend money to see this movie, even if you're a fan of Trump, you deserve a better like hagiography movie than this. And I'll end by saying that this thing really seems so proud of its like lack of substance and facts. It would fit in perfectly at any Republican sponsored event. That's my second half-star review of the year, my worst of the year. The only movie that could have made my number one was a movie with Emma Roberts called Space Cadet. I probably should have included that on my dishonorable mentions. The only reason I didn't was because I didn't finish it. And so ethically, I can't really write a review of it because I didn't finish it. But that one probably would have been a more fun pick for number one. But if I'm going off of movies I watch credits to credits, Vindicating Trump's number one.
Okay. I got nothing other to add other than I did see that Obama 2016 movie in theaters, and I honestly don't remember anything about it. I just remember being just kind of sitting there being like, is any of this actually factual? Like, that's all I
do think there
remember.
were stats in that movie, though.
There were, yeah,
at the
there
very
were.
least.
There were, and some of it was actually like, oh wow, this is actually like research, and then some of it was like opinionated research, and it was like, oh okay, so like you claim this to be fact in your documentary. Okay, all right. Anyways, my number one. He's back, baby. Borderlands is my number one.
Oh my god. He took that personally. You took his favorite game and he took it personally.
He's back. He's about as annoying as every other Eagles fan too. He won't shut the fuck up when you want him to.
That is true.
Directed by Eli Roth. I don't blame this man though for this dumpster fire. Where not to watch, it's on Stars. Where you can play it though is Xbox, PlayStation, Steam, and your Nintendo Switch console. Because if you want to right now, 2K is having its 20th anniversary, and Borderlands, the first game remaster, is available for $4. You should go and get it if you've never played those games before and just want to spend a fun weekend, especially if you got President's Day off. Just grinding, looting. You're probably snowed in if you're in the Midwest, so might as well head out that way. I don't blame Eli Roth, like I said. I blame so many other people, like Avi Arad, who is known for taking a lot of these projects and just kind of butchering stuff, making stuff into just a very, like, you know, marketable thing to sell toys, to sell to kids. If you remember, he was the infamous guy that pushed for Venom to be in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 because Venom will sell toys. He's done it with many other projects and many other things, and it feels like he does it here. I don't blame Eli Roth because the directors and studio behind Borderlands, Gearbox, leader Randy Pitchford, was one of the producers on this film. And yet, everything I watched on screen felt like I didn't really feel like it translated from the game to the screen. It felt like, yeah, you got the look of it as much as, what's his name? The guy that used to direct those Resident Evil movies that almost sounds like Wes Anderson. Paul W.S. Anderson. Paul W.S. Anderson did the same thing. He would take just images from the games of Resident Evil and just put it next to his smoking hot wife, Mila Jovovich, and just be like, yeah, I did it. I adapted the game. And it felt like the same thing here. You know, you just took it and just threw it on the screen. But there's nothing about the game's essence and everything really featured in this movie at all. You look at the game and it's like, man, you know, Steve mentioned like they should have done the same thing they did with Captain Underpants, with Harold and the Purple Crayon. Shit, they should have done the same thing. It's fucking Sony at the end of the day. They should have done the same thing with Spider-Verse and with this movie. Give it that graphic art style. Make it a fucking animated movie because it would have at least looked like the game. It would have had that like kind of gritty look to the game too. If you would have done like that comic book art style to it, it could have looked similar to the game. And like you could have had the same script, same actors. I at least would have walked out of that game and been like, dude, at least it looked like the game. There's only moments of this game where it's like, as Dom said, like the costumes looked like it, you know, the makeup was done well, but it's like, hey, the set designers tried their best. But it's like, man, live action was not how you were supposed to do this at all. It is a miscast. Everybody's been saying that. I still defend the pick for Lilith, which is oh my god. We were just saying her name earlier.
Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett, yeah.
Thank you. I still defend that because at least she is acting her ass off throughout this movie. But Jack Black as Claptrap, this little guy right here, man, talk about a 180 in terms of video game performances. He came off of doing Bowser in the Super Mario movie, where everybody was like, dude, he was so good. It was so fun watching him as that character, to being the most annoying character, I think, of this year, which is Claptrap. And then you got other people too, Jamie Lee Curtis, who I feel like is not really given much to do here. Ariana Greenblatt, Kevin Hart too. I mean, like, you want to talk about 180 performance, dude. He starts off the movie being wisecracking jokes, and then throughout half the movie, then he becomes very serious and everything. It's just like, I have no idea what you're doing here. I'll wrap it up with this. The thing that made me put this at my number one is the fact you have all these people who were in charge of the games behind this movie. And you look at stuff like the Fallout show and many other recent video game adaptations, The Last of Us, even the Super Mario Brothers movie. You look at those, and the studio behind them uh, worked with the video game studio to at least have like some type of identity that you see in the games come to the screen. Borderlands' big thing is the guns, the bazillion gazillion guns, whatever the hell fake name they use to describe as many guns as there are. And you have guns that can talk to you. You have guns that explode when you reload them. You just throw them at people and they explode. You have guns that are boomerangs after you like throw them, and as it's boomerang around, it reloads. This movie doesn't do any of that. There's no creativity with the weapons, and that's where you could have done some cool action sequence. And it felt like did the producers, did Randy Pitchford, did Gearbox themselves forget? Oh shit! Yeah, the reason why people buy these games is because like they group up with a bunch of friends and then they get these cool loot, and then like you're just watching all these people like work together and like oh dude, look at this, my gun's talking to me. Oh look, I reloaded my gun and it's empty and it became a little mini sentry and it's running around and like shooting people. Like that's so cool. Like no, you forgot all of that, and there's just no identity to this movie. It is soulless, it is lifeless, and it is my number one pick of the worst movie of 2024 and probably one of the worst movies for me of all time.
All time. Holy
all
All
time.
shit.
I hated this movie, man. I was steaming when I came out of this. This brought me back to like when I gave it a half star, and I said in the review,
That's right.
I haven't given a half star review on Sleepless since we reviewed Woody the Woodpecker.
No, two movies to share that honor too, and that came from the heart too. That came
Yeah.
from the heart as a fan of the game and
Yeah.
everything too.
I
So
get it. I do
I
get it.
respect that.
And I know like some people be like, hey man, you're probably biased because you watched the game, you played the games and everything. Yeah, I do have that going, but I still thought it was just that shitty even without the games.
Yeah.
Dom, you're gonna send us home here.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So my number one is unfortunately Unfrosted. I have not seen a movie just bring down
Into
everyone.
this
Yeah.
because you were into
Just every time it's almost tragedy. Every time a new actor comes on the screen, I feel sad that they were involved with this. Granted, look, they're getting a paycheck, they're hanging out with other actors that they like. I'm not sad on their behalf. It just makes me sad. I think that's been the running theme of this bottom five. Is I'm just really sad because I think one actor from this cast is gonna die in the next 5 years, and they're no 3 years, the next 3 years, and one of the last things that they'll be involved in is this movie. It's not gonna be Bill Burr. He's gonna be busy. It's not, but like, you think no, not Dan. Oh, no, Dan. Okay, I saw the cast list for the show, and I thought Andy Warhol was played by Dan Levy's dad, Gene Levy. But no, we talked about this already. It's it's a really deflating movie to watch, and I can't believe that this was made. But the fact that it was roped in by Jerry Seinfeld and his buddies, the guy who made the B movie, the guy who wrote the B movie was involved with this, created Unfrosted, and that it's I don't understand how you have a solid idea like making a parody of all these movies like Air, right? Fantastic movie. Air, Unfrosted, two movies on the opposite end. This is my worst movie of 2024. Air was my best movie of 2023, I think, right? Or did Air
It
come out
was
last
on
year?
that list. It might have been your number one. I remember it was high up though.
I
It
think
was my number
one.
one for whatever year it was. I know that for sure. Either 23 or I think it was 23. Yeah. Had to be 23 because we just did 24. Okay. And this is a lesson in how to make a movie in the business sense. One is one movie you take seriously, which was Air. The other movie you don't take seriously. Comedy, I'm sorry, but when you're making a comedy movie, you kind of need to make it serious. You need to take it seriously. And that's what they didn't do with this film. I am saddened that it made $70 million in whatever metric, I guess the box office. Was it in theaters? I don't even know. I think it was straight to Netflix. Um, Hugh Grant, dude, we might lose Hugh Grant somewhat soon. He's not that old, but something tells me it's like, man, I really hope. No, no, he was in something last. He was in a good movie last year, right, Steve? I didn't watch it.
Heretic.
Yeah, exactly. So at least he's got that going for him. It just makes me sad when like you see an actor, an artist, a singer or whatever, and like the last thing they're involved in is like a complete utter piece of shit. And I hope that's not what we're going to get with Unfrosted. So I'm sorry I couldn't be more entertaining with this worst movie of the year. I was thinking about doing like a whole monologue, being creative and like just swearing this thing out. But it honestly just makes me sad that you see a host of talent, really good talent in this movie. And it all of it is squandered for the personal ego and effing around of a guy who dated a 17-year-old when he was 38 years old, Jerry Seinfeld. That's just really unfortunate. And I don't get it.
I want to add one more thing too for some
Hmm.
crossover here. There's so many people in this thing. Maria Bakalova's in this movie. You know, who I just realized is in this movie. The director of Joe's #5 worst film of 2024, Y2K. Kyle Mooney is
Mooney?
Snap of
Yes.
Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
Hmm.
Oh,
A
dude.
lot of SNL people here. Bobby
Kyle,
Moynihan as Chef
I was,
Boyardee.
Unfrosted didn't make my list, but man,
I
there's a
didn't
little bit
even
of Kyle Mooney.
realize that he was in this when I
Kyle
rewatched it
Mooney
again.
crossover on that. I like it. Now we can put 2024 to bed and reference it, reference some movies in future movie reviews that we do. Really quick before we end Sleepless with Steve, next week is a show I've been looking forward to since mid 2023. This thing is finally out and available to rent. Finally, it is the movie I Like Movies that made my list of favorite films of 2023. This thing is finally able to rent across multiple different platforms, including Vudu, which I think now is Fandango at home, but I'm still going to call it Vudu. Amazon, Google Play, YouTube. It's finally available to rent. It's not really streaming anywhere, but you can rent it, which is what I will do for you gentlemen this weekend so you guys can see it finally. This is a Canadian production that was held up in distribution for reasons that I cannot figure out. I can't figure out why that is the case, but Chandler Levac is the woman behind it. This is a movie, too, that is focused on a self-centered cinephile, a young teenage boy, directed by a woman, and this is very good. I can't wait for you guys to watch it. I've been talking about it. I've kept it kind of floating on the schedule now for over a year and a
Yeah.
half
It's a
actually.
it's a Mount Rushmore of Sleepless at this point.
Yeah, because I'm like, I love. It was like when we did one of our lists, and I had Punch Nine for Harold Washington, the Harold Washington documentary on it. I'm like, I love talking about movies the general public can't see. I love talking about how great these movies are that the general public can't watch.
It's like when I saw Tenet and I was like telling you guys, I'm like, no, like you gotta believe me here. Like it's just it doesn't make sense.
I Like Movies will be our movie review next week, though. Taking a break from the new releases, talking about a movie that technically came out in 2023, but if you would have liked, because this thing finally saw a release here, if you'd like to include it in your lists for 2025, that's how much I think of this movie and how much I think you will think of this movie. I think I will deem it eligible, at least on the Sleepless scale. So.
Nepo pick.
I Like Movies is our review next week. Until then, I want to give a big shout out to Joe. Managing those slideshows is a lot on top of the show. You
Yes.
do a phenomenal job. I was watching part of the show on another tab over here. So great job as always conducting this show. These are two big shows, two of our biggest of the year. And I'm grateful for your participation, grateful for the great work that you do. That is our show tonight. Kept you guys way too late after 8 o'clock. We got to get some sleep. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.